16-year-old Ralph Yarl shot twice by homeowner after he mistakenly showed up to the wrong house to pick up his siblings. I'm digital anchor Andre Ash at Real Times Media. This story has the nation and Black America in an uproar. We talk with Yarl's family attorney, Lee Merritt. How's Ralph doing right now? His condition?
Ralph is recovering. It's going to be a long road to recovery. The injuries that he sustained are permanent, but the level, how quickly he has recovered is nothing short of a miracle. He's walking, he's talking. He spoke with VP Kamala Harris yesterday. He spoke with the president on Sunday. He and I had a conversation, went for a walk. He's doing amazingly well considering.
How's the family taking all of this right now? And I know they're getting a lot of support from the community who have rallied. How they're taking this right now?
Well, the family has been on an emotional roller coaster. Less than a week ago, Ralph was shot, and they received that news, which had to be one of the lowest points of their life. The surgery was successful on Friday. He was speaking, and on Saturday, he was released from the hospital, which was an emotional high for them. They thought that they may lose him, and instead he went home. But there were no arrests, and the criminal justice system was treating his assault like it was no big deal. And then, of course, they received this great outpouring from the community over the past few days, which has been uplifting for them. But as you can imagine, they have just been through a great deal of emotions over the course of the last less than a week.
Yeah. What is both the family's reaction, but also from a legal perspective, your take on the timeline in which the 84-year-old Andrew Lester was taken into custody to be charged days after this shooting without any immediate questioning by police in the first place? What's your take on the legal path and where you see this?
The timeline is very problematic concerning how they treated Mr. Andrew Lester. Lester went to the police department on his own reconnaissance. They lied to the public. They've continued to produce a lie to the public that he was held for 24 hours under Missouri law. He was not. He was questioned and released within 2 hours. If they would have held him for 24 hours, they would have held him long enough to get a statement from the victim, who I guess at that point they didn't know that he would survive. But long story short, they released him, and it did not seem that they intended to charge him. They believed that he had an affirmative defense under the stand your ground laws in Missouri or under the Castle Doctrine of Missouri. Both are inapplicable because both are self-defense doctrines built around the ideal of you're allowed to protect yourself from a threat. 16-year-old ringing your doorbell is not a threat. And so we were relieved to see charges move forward on Monday, but Mr. Lester was not in custody, and he was at large until yesterday afternoon. He made he was able to post a $200,000 bond, or 10% of that $20,000 bond. And now he's back out into the world.
84-year-old Andrew Lester was charged with assault in the first degree and armed criminal action. A defense that he's putting up is that he thought that his home was getting broken into. How did the defense hold up? And what says you about the county prosecutor saying that this is a case that has a racial component? Do you believe so?
Concerning Mr. Lester's defense, he says that Ralph represented a threat, which he'll have to establish at law in order to even be afforded that defense before a jury. I don't think he gets there. He says that it was the size of Ralph, not anything that he was doing. He didn't believe that he had a weapon, but it was the size of Ralph that caused him, an 84-year-old man, to fear for his life. Well, Ralph is 5'8", 140 pounds. He's an unassuming kid who politely rang his doorbell and waited outside on the porch. That defense is going to be inapplicable. The prosecutor, Mr. Thompson, the Clay County prosecutor, says that there's a racial element to the case, and of course there is. Ralph was shot because he was Black, because Mr. Lester feared his Blackness. The prosecutor did not expound upon what he meant. And so when we in the family met with him yesterday, we had a chance to ask him for a little more insight into that comment. And he only gave a superficial response that He was making a statement consistent with what the police chief said, basically to soothe over the Black community, to let them know that they also see race. It was kind of patronizing, honestly.
Certainly, it's a difficult time for him with the injuries, but directly, has he been able to communicate his encounter at that time?
He has been able to share his version of events, his side of the story with police. He is under the care of a therapist who is helping him both with his memory and his recovery. His family and I have not asked him to go back over the facts of the incident. He hasn't shared any of his experiences with news outlets or things like that because he's focusing on recovering. But he has provided law enforcement with enough evidence for them to move forward with prosecution.
Yeah. And I guess for you as the family's attorney, how does this personally make you feel? Is it outrageous? It's you partner with another civil rights attorney, Benjamin Crump. In this case, it has garnered national attention. And taking this case on and representing the family, how are you all coping through this situation, even for you personally?
It's a unique case. Ben and I, Mr. Crump and I had a conversation along with our friend Sean King, who first brought us into this case on behalf of this family. We don't know that we've come together on a case before where the victim survived, especially something so horrific. And so it's an added motivation to force the nation to look at this for what it was, another instance of racial violence, and to deal with it accordingly. But I look at young Ralph, 16-year-old born in 2006, and I think about my 13-year-old born in 2009. And it's hard to compartmentalize and just be a professional. This case is emotional, and it involves a miraculous element. Ralph shouldn't be here today. Ralph was shot in the head. He didn't almost get shot in the head. It didn't graze his head. A bullet went into his brain and then disintegrated. And doctors don't understand it. I don't understand it, but I know God is trying to tell us something.
Certainly, you will undoubtedly stay on this case, and we will continue to follow it for sure. Attorney Lee Merritt, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time.
Thank you for having me.